Welcome to this episode of Eureka. We are going to have a very interesting, very engaging, very enlightening conversation with Dr. Alok Dhawan. He is the director of Indian Institute of Toxicology Research, a constituent of CSIR, and one of the institute at the forefront of COVID war. Behind the scene warriors, people who are harnessing science and technology to fight this pandemic while the medical professionals and administrators are in the front line. CSIR has taken up a huge challenge of harnessing all its institute one way or other to involve them in this fight against COVID. We are going to talk in this episode with its director, Dr. Alok Dhawan, how Indian Institute of Toxicology Research is contributing with its present capabilities. At the same time, how it is reinventing itself to address some of the chief questions, drugs. Let's start this conversation, sir. Thank you for being with us. It's a very wonderful and great opportunity. Let me start with this question that you are one of the earliest institution in Uttar Pradesh to go in for trying to develop a alcohol-based sanitizer, because in the beginning, there was a huge demand for it. There was a shortage. We needed our own technologies to manufacture them. So can you just describe us this this path that you took in the very, very beginning?
Yeah, so thank you very much for bringing me on to Eureka. I think it's a wonderful program, and it disseminates what is happening in the institutions and what kind of science is prevailing in the institutes for the common good. Very rightly, as you mentioned, that as the first lockdown happened, the district administration, which is almost next door to us, they approached us and they said that it would be very difficult for us to open the very, very simple things like the ration shops. They wanted to distribute rations, and because it is connected with a POD device where they have to put their finger and the Aadhaar cards comes up. So they said we can't do it without the sanitizer. So is it possible for you to give us some sanitizer to open the ration shop? So within 2 to 3 days time, we were able to give them approximately 500 liters of the WHO formulated alcohol sanitizer, and that's how it started. And then because they wanted other things to be opened up, so they were sort of coming back to us. So in the initial phase itself, in the a month and a half or so, we were able to give them almost 2,000 liters of hand sanitizer for municipal workers, for other people who are on the front line, the policemen, the CRPF battalions that were installed here at various places, even the medical colleges, the COVID centers in small districts, etc. So by now we have almost given them 3,500 to 4,000 liters of hand sanitizer. And the other good thing that happened, that as soon as we got into this, we got local companies to team up with us, and this was a CSR activity. So it was all funded by local companies. We were just in the forefront to sort of get it, and as we increased in volumes, the local companies even started saying that, okay, we will be able to package it for you free of cost and give it to government. So I think it was a movement that happened, which later on culminated into a startup coming over to us. And now they are manufacturing it on their own and sending it across the country. So I think that has been a good sort of story coming out of this institution, where at the drop of a hat, if I may use that phrase, our scientists sort of got together and immediately rose to the occasion, so that people did not suffer. At least the district administration would go ahead and do their work.
Yeah, in the post-COVID world, I mean, for quite some time we would have to live with this hand sanitizer and some of these hygiene practices. So it's not something that is that's an input only for a few months. I'm sure for next few years we may have to follow some of these hygiene procedures, and this kind of startup, and then trying to manufacture it at the local level itself is a very important factor. But of course, sanitizer is a very low-hanging fruit. But beyond that, I'm also told that you're trying to develop a microwave-based disinfectant. I mean, not for human beings, but for artifacts like PPE and so on, so that, I mean, they can be reused. So can you describe how that actually works? What is it and how does it work?
Sure. I think that's another sort of, I should say, small shot in the arm for us. So one of our former incubatees, they had come with a device which is a microwave-based disinfection for biomedical devices.
Okay.
They were incubated with us, saying that we'd like to see how we can develop more applications on this device. So the device was there, and they wanted to develop more applications. So at that point in time, we had developed applications for microwave-based disinfection of, let's say, hospital linen, which can be easily done. So just to get a sort of perspective of it, generally what we do is if you want to disinfect, we autoclave. So there's a lot of water that goes down the drain, the high energy that is required, a lot of electricity that is required. As opposed to microwave, which is almost like a green technology, water is not wasted, the energy consumption is very low. So, and we call it as a zero discharge kind of system.
Okay.
So when they came to us, we were looking at various applications that it can be used for, and that's how we sort of developed 2 or 3 applications for them. And when COVID actually happened, they said, why don't we tweak this cycle for linen into a cycle that can actually, because it's all computer controlled. It has a sort of, it's all electronic system, so they can be programmed. So they said, why don't we develop a cycle that can disinfect PPEs and N95 masks? So we did some work with them, and they were able to develop a cycle that was able to do that. For that, they have now come up. So the other advantage was that they almost have 150 machines installed already across the country for biomedical disinfection. Most of the AIIMS have got for biomedical disinfection, they're using it.
So the same thing can be tweaked for this purpose with this small innovation, right?
Correct. So that small thing that we have done with them, actually, that was very useful. And now we have got some tests done, and I think it's in the process of taking it forward. I think through ICMR, perhaps they'll have to go and sort of get it. So I think the ecosystem that has developed around CSIR labs, especially for the young entrepreneurs and budding startups, I think it is very important step that CSIR has taken to engage with the startups, engage with the entrepreneurs, and also galvanize its scientists and research fellows into different aspects of this COVID-19.
Very, very, very interesting. But one small technical question, like how does microwave actually destroys the virus? I mean, when we talk about soap, we know how it works. People have been talking about it quite long, and we know how sanitizer works against the microorganism. But how does a microwave actually kills the virus?
So actually, microwave essentially, as you know, that it takes totally destroys the cell wall, everything that comes in the way of that. So I think that's how it just creates an environment where all the bacteria, virus, everything, they're just destroyed totally, annihilated, or you can say in a sense it is incinerated at that very low temperature, but yet the system is such that it gets totally disintegrated.
Yeah, so basically for medical professionals, this is a shot in the arm, right? I mean, now they can sanitize many of those PPEs or N95 mask or other instruments which they may be using for the COVID purpose. Otherwise, they were using it for sanitizing in the hospital. That's what you are saying, right?
Generally, what is happening that you are supposed to use these PPEs and N95 masks only for once. What we are thinking now is that if everything works out well, you can perhaps in the very non-essential areas, maybe where PPEs are used, we can reuse these PPEs, so that cuts down on the pricing or the it saves on the money that you spend. In the US also, they have now said that they will be disinfecting the N95 masks. FDA has approved using hydrogen peroxide mist. So they are disinfecting close to 80,000 masks at one go. I think that's.
Yeah, nice. That's very interesting. And recently, you have also become a node for connecting the supply chains, right? I mean, that's something that your institute has been given that task in Uttar Pradesh people who would like to have materials and people who are supplying materials making a chain. So can you explain what this node means? I mean, what does it actually imply?
Yeah, so I think it's a very good question, and I am sure you are aware that it's all over the place that supply chains have got disrupted across the country. Not only supply chains from abroad, but within the country because of lack of transportation and problems that occurred. So in the very beginning itself, CSR realized that these supply chains are going to get disrupted. So they made an app called Arogya Path app. So not only it captures other things, but along with that, it also captures the problems that one is facing. So initially, we were doing it for within our own institutions. If there's a problem for any consumable or anything that one is facing for development of a particular equipment or hospital-assisted devices, if you're facing any issue, you can always raise it up. And we're trying to connect as many entrepreneurs on that supply chain app.
Okay.
But as we moved out, we thought it would be a good idea for different areas to have their own nodes. So for Uttar Pradesh, CSIR IITR was chosen to be the node for this supply chain app. And we have also connected people from our local entrepreneurs from Uttar Pradesh. But at the same time, it was then also thought that it would be a good idea for the technologies developed by CSIR. So you must be aware that Honorable Minister Dr. Harshvardhan has recently released a compendium of more than 100 technologies that have been developed in a very short span of time by CSIR in various areas. So it was also proposed that these technologies should be showcased at the regional hubs. So we'll start showcasing these technologies at our institute as well. For two things. One, of course, the local entrepreneurs who may not have been privy to these technologies, let's say developed at in Pune or in Bangalore or elsewhere, now they can actually see the technology firsthand as it is displayed in the institution. That is one. Second, we are able to connect these people to all over the country to CSR labs. So in case they want to take a technology, they can take it and start manufacturing in Uttar Pradesh. And thirdly, we thought it's a good idea that not only the entrepreneurs, we can also showcase this to the district administration and also to the government of UP. So in the various states where these hubs have been made, the directors and the institutions are getting in touch with the governments of that state. So we have now already gotten in touch with our state government, and we apprise them of the technologies that are available. And we are at various levels of discussion currently with the state government and CSIR headquarters, so that through this node we can help ensure that all these technologies are readily made available to the government of Uttar Pradesh. As you know, it's one of the highest population state. So we'd like to ensure that not only technologies pertaining to COVID, but also pertaining to rural employment, for example, can be given to the state through the nodes and directly through the CSIR headquarters. So that's how these nodes function, and that is how they played a major role during these difficult times in COVID.
That's very interesting, and this is where we'll take a very short break. We'll take a very short break. Keep watching Eureka. After the break, we are going to talk about how the Indian Institute of Toxicology Research is contributing towards developing drugs against COVID. Keep watching. We'll take a very short break. Welcome back to Eureka. We are having a very wonderful conversation with Dr. Alok Dhawan. He is the director of Indian Institute of Toxicology Research, a constituent unit of CSIR in Lucknow. Sir, your institute was one of the institute which forms part of a group in India which is trying to repurpose the already existing drugs to see if they can help fight against COVID. So you are using computational methods. So in a simple way, can you explain how the computational methods are used for identifying whether a particular already existing molecule will be helpful or not?
Yeah, so I think it's a very pertinent question that you raised. I think the entire globe is currently struggling to find not only drugs, but drugs that are affordable, drugs that are safe, drugs that are efficacious for this fight against the COVID-19. So at the same instance, we also, since we have a very high-end computational system, we thought it would be a good idea to look at the understanding of how these antivirals or the drugs that have been approved for another cause can be used for this, especially to look at, let's say, how we can block the viral entry. So our scientists have been looking at how we can block the viral entry, and they're looking at especially targeting the proteins in that aspect. Let's say our M protein, which is the membrane protein, or the spike protein, or the CL protein. So we are trying to look at how we can block the entry of the virus. That was one. And the second aspect that our scientists are looking at is the RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. So this, how we can stop the multiplication of this virus. So both these aspects, doing studies in the lab will take a lot of time. But since we had very high-end computational systems that are available with us, so we thought it would be a good idea to do modeling on that and try to understand how these FDA-approved drugs work. Is there a possibility for these drugs that can be repurposed? So I think we are feeding into the larger chain of CSIR, which is, as you are aware, even a couple of drugs have already been, are in their various phases of clinical trials, but also the processes for drugs have been developed and handed over to the pharmaceutical companies so that they can come for the good of the Indian population. So I think in that larger perspective, IITR is also playing a role where we are trying to see the mechanism of the action of the already approved US FDA approved drugs and how they can be repurposed for COVID-19.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Now you are talking about, for example, two important aspects of virus. One is that virus has to enter a human cell. Only then virus becomes active. Otherwise, I mean, virus is just a kind of a dead dust particle, right? I mean, next is that after entering a human cell or a host cell, it has to harness or kidnap all the cellular mechanism, make copies of itself so that it can spread to other cells. So you are looking at two important aspects of viral action within our bodies, right? I mean, like the infection and the replication, that two areas, which is, I think, very, very interesting aspect. That you are also saying that because you had a high-end computational facility, you are feeding into the CSIR research system in developing drugs, which we are seeing today. Indian-made drugs are in the clinical trial, which are affordable compared to international prices. Although this drug compound is already discovered, that we are trying to find out whether it works for COVID, and then the Indian manufactured one are working for COVID. That's an interesting aspect. But can you slightly more elaborate that how do you actually do it in a computer? I mean, lab, everybody can understand. Take a test, you put this, check whether it works or not. So how do you do it in a computer? I mean, how does the computational part works in?
So essentially, we are doing a virtual screening. We know the targets, we know the protein targets, we have the structure of these proteins, and we look at the compounds and how they bind to these proteins and how they're able to bind in a more effective manner. So there are several descriptors, if I may use that word, in computational biology, that allow you to see whether, which of these compounds are binding better. Are they binding at the site which is important for binding of that particular virus to the cellular proteins? So these kind of virtual screenings platforms are available on which we can actually do this. Not only that, we are also looking at molecular dynamic simulations. So, for example, if this protein is getting interacted with the drug or the proposed molecule that we are looking at, for how long it is going to interact. So we can actually do a simulation for a particular timeline, let's say 100 nanoseconds or few milliseconds or microseconds, whatever it is. So that will give us a sense of the mechanism by which this virus is going to act, for how long it is able to interact with the particular protein. So that gives us a lot of insight into the activities of this virus and how it is behaving.
Okay, interesting. So in a sense that, I mean, in a very popular way, if I have to say so, that many of your scientists are actually doing some kind of video game, right? But with the virus as the enemy and your drug.
With the virus as a target, we are trying to see how best we can eliminate it.
Yeah. With the target molecule, I mean, the candidate molecule as your weapon, you are trying to see how this target molecule is effective against that virus. In a computational space, before you can actually try it out. So see, one important question is that why do we want to look at already existing molecules? Why don't we discover a new molecule? Would that not be a better thing? I mean, get the right drug for the COVID-19?
So as you're aware that this is a pandemic, unlike others where you have, there is a timeline and few people are affected or infected and you can actually go ahead. Here we are racing against time. So essentially globally what people are doing is trying to repurpose drugs which are already available for two reasons. One, that their safety is known. It has been there for a long time, so people have consumed it, so they know what are the side effects, etc. If it has to be given to a population which is susceptible, if it is to be given to a population which has got comorbidities, all the side effects are known for these drugs. So I think that was the major advantage. The second advantage is that we know the side effects. So is it possible to quickly cut down on the side effects? So again, computational biology plays a major role in that, where you can look at analogs of these drugs. So rather than synthesize, which takes time, bring it up to scale. So you can use analogs, construct those analogs on computer and try to simulate them and see if they are better suited, if they have better efficacy. If not, even if the efficacy is not, it is equivalent, but if the toxicity is low, it is safer. I think that, so I think we're just trying to cut down on the timeline through which the drug comes to the market. I think that has been the sole purpose of CSIR, to look at how quickly we can bring something which is useful, because it's hurting everyone across the globe, not only the country.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. And your institute in UP was one of the earliest institute to get into diagnostics, right? I mean, when the pandemic hit India, we had to quickly gear ourselves to test people who are infected, and that facility had to be built from bottom up. So your institution was one of the earliest institution to provide its facilities for that. So how did you gear up, and what kind of facilities you already had so that you were able to provide this support?
So yeah, I think as you're aware that when this pandemic broke, the major issue was how do we test the samples. So initially, ICMR had designated laboratories and the medical colleges across the country to do the COVID testing. But as the number of positive cases increased and more samples had to be tested, the government of India took a call that why not the other laboratories that are science and technology labs across the country, let it be CSR labs or DBT labs or DST labs, all these labs can be brought into the system and they can also start testing. So we immediately sort of had a discussion, and within about 15 to 20 days, our culture lab that was available with us, we got that converted into a lab that can be safely used under the guidance of ICMR. We were able to convert it into a lab that can be used for COVID testing using RT-PCR. And after that, we started in about first week of May to test the samples. So we started in the first week of May, and initially the government of UP had suggested that we can start with, let's say, 50 samples per day, which was, we also thought it would be a good idea for us to look at how we can do this kind of diagnostics. But once our scientists got familiar with the entire system and they were very confident, we then switched over to 100 samples per day, and currently we are doing close to about 600 to 700 samples, sometimes 1100 to 1200 samples per day, and we have almost crossed the figure of 40,000 samples in the state of Uttar Pradesh that have been sent to us. So I think it was a phenomenal decision taken by the government, and the way the scientists stood up to the occasion, I think it is phenomenal. And it has not only helped the country, but also in various states wherever CSR labs are there, I think it has helped the states to enhance their capacity of testing. And not only that, we are also looking at how we can train other people once we have set up this facility. So we were among the first CSR labs to start in Lucknow, but as you are aware, there are other CSR labs in Lucknow. So when they wanted to start, we were also able to train the personnel in that lab, and so they could start. One more thing that has happened, the Department of Biotechnology actually formed clusters of these laboratories in various parts of India. And so Lucknow cluster comprised of, as of now, 4 laboratories: our lab, CDRI, NBRI, and BSIP, which is Birbal Sahni Institute of Paleobotany, which is a DST lab. So these 4 labs are contributing to these clusters, and so a weekly report is sent to DBT, and I'm very happy that initially, although we are picking up because each of us were trying to understand the nuances of diagnostics. But as of now, for the past 2 weeks almost, we have been number 1 across the country in terms of the number of samples that we've analyzed per week. So last week, I think it was about 12,000 that we did per week among these 4 labs. And this week, it is close to 13,000. So I think that's very encouraging to see that not only our institute, but the other institutes that are involved in this activity have risen to the occasion for this national cause. I think that's very important.
Very, very, very interesting. And one of the activities in which, again, a national program in which your institute is part is sequencing. I mean, many institutions are collecting isolates, that is a virus sample from patients across the country, sequencing it so that we can know what kind of mutations are taking place and whether that mutations will have an effect on, let's say, our RT-PCR test kit or, for example, the drug or vaccine that are going to come up. So can you explain where are you standing in this sequencing? Where is your current position?
Sure. So actually, for sequencing, you very rightly said, several of the CSR labs have come forward. And I would say the pioneers in this have been CSR IGIB in New Delhi and CCMB in Hyderabad. Yeah. They were the early starters. We perhaps were sort of getting our systems together. So by end of this month or early next month, we'll be starting. We already collected the samples which were positive there. And I should also mention here that for this purpose and also for analyzing the data that is coming to us, we have teamed up with the local medical school, which is the King George Medical University of Lucknow, which is also the nodal lab for Uttar Pradesh assigned by ICMR. So along with them, we are trying to understand, because when we start sequencing or we look at the medical data, it's also important to have medical personnel on board. So I think it will be important for us when we come up with our inferences that what we infer is correct. So from that standpoint, I think both the King George Medical University and the Sanjay Gandhi Postgraduate Institute of Medical Sciences, SGPGIMS in Lucknow, we will be collaborating with them as we move forward. So initially, we have thought that we'll sequence the samples that we have, but at some point in time, we have already spoken to KGMU. We'll be looking, because as you are aware that each of the institutes have been assigned a certain district, or maybe a couple of districts. So currently we are doing 2 or 3 districts of Uttar Pradesh. But as you're aware, there are about more than 75 districts in Lucknow, in Uttar Pradesh. So we'll try to take those samples or the, which are important to have the sample size of the entire UP. So initially, if you look at the way the disease spread, there were initial people who came from abroad.
Yeah.
Those were the positive cases. Then an incident happened in Delhi. People moved from there to different parts of Uttar Pradesh. That was the next spread. And the third spread was when people from all over the country started coming back. So it'll be very interesting. We've had discussions not only with King George Medical University, but also our sister labs, CSIR, CDRI, and NBRI. And we're looking at very interesting facts. We'll be able to sort of get a sense of how this virus has come, from which parts of the world it has come to UP, because it's become a melting pot. UP has become a melting pot for all kind of populations coming from different parts of not only the country but the world. So I think we're really looking forward to interesting times in terms of the sequencing activity that IITR is going to be taking forward.
Very, very, very interesting, and I'm sure both in terms of knowledge and also for justifying or verifying whether the vaccines will be adequate. This kind of research is needed. For want of time, we may have to end our conversation here. We have had a very, very interesting, very informative conversation. Thank you for being in the show. Keep watching Eureka. We'll come back with another conversation next week, same time.